Alright guys, what's going on? So it has been some weeks since we installed this Syntropic system, and I've had a ton of questions and requests for a follow-up. How's it growing? You know, what's going on over there? Are you having success? And first things I'm going to tell you guys is my first failure on this whole project was that we tilled the rows in between here. We seeded with some Mombasa grass, and like 2 days after I did that, we had some crazy Florida monsoonal rains, and it turns out there's about 2 inches of drop here to the north. Very, you know, Florida's typically very flat, so not a lot of topography here, but there is about 2 inches drop towards the north end of the property, and we got some crazy monsoonal rains, and what it did was it washed that seed down. So you can see at this end, the grass looks much thicker. That end is obviously the lowest spot. That's where most of the grass is coming up. So that was the first failure. I have a top dressing machine. I'm actually going to cut this really low here very soon. I'm gonna try some light seeding again, try putting a top dress of some compost biochar over that and see if we get a better germination. You know, after talking with Jim Kovaleski about wanting to use the scythe for this, you know, constantly cutting the grass and putting it along the edges as part of, you know, the main nutrition for feeding the system in this this Syntropic system. You know, first thing Jim said was, like, I don't know if that's enough grass. So not only am I gonna reseed these rows over here, but I'm actually going to seed probably about half of this field, and the idea being, just like when Jim's up in Maine and he's cutting that 5-acre field, he's bringing that material back to his garden system, whether it be, you know, veggie garden in his case, fruit tree, you know, system in my case. You know, I'll basically stockpile the grass out here, and let's say I cut a quarter of it every time, you know, just to have that extra material to bring back over here. So I don't even think I had enough grass space to begin with, so that was the main failure. Second thing I'll tell you guys is, you know, about 50% of those comments, people couldn't believe how densely we planted. Like, oh my gosh, you know, how's that going to work out in the long run? Aren't those roots going to get intertwined? I had question on question on question. You know, and also I had a lot of questions about these nitrogen fixing trees, these, you know, so-called invasive trees. And just so you guys know, you know, the Albizia lebic, the Lucana, things like that. I've already taken the seeds off of that stuff 3 or 4 times. These are service trees. By service trees, they are, you know, working for me in the system. So every time you prune a nitrogen fixing tree, it's actually releasing that nitrogen through the nodules. So that pruning process not only takes those seeds off, gives me that, you know, organic mulch material, but it's also releasing nitrogen in the system. So, you know, yes, you know, these trees might be classified as invasive, but, you know, this tree isn't going to escape and end up in my neighbor's yard by the way I manage it. If it ever gets to a point where I can't manage these trees like I'm supposed to, I'll just yank them out of the system. You know, these, like I said, this is a very experimental planting. So you could see those are those Lucanas on the end, and I've trimmed and tipped those probably 3 times now. Some of the ones down on that end are actually resetting seeds, so I'll pull those out very soon. The second one that I think that I maybe kind of failed on a little bit too, and, you know, shout out to all these guys in the Syntropic game, the leaders. You know, one of my favorite guys out there, I didn't even mention in my last video, is my good friend Andrew. He's down in Brazil. You could find him on Instagram under Syntropical. You know, and Andrew, I think his father probably has, you know, 100 hectares, or I mean, sorry, 1,000 hectares, 2,000 hectares, and, you know, does standard crops, you know, whether it be corn, soy, you know, on scale, monoculture, agriculture. And Andrew has fallen in love with this Syntropic model, you know, fallen in love with what Ernst Gausch, I probably pronounced his last name wrong, is doing down there in Brazil, you know, and went and taken the classes and, you know, been watching these ideas for years and told his dad, like, you know, this is how we need to be farming, Dad, you know, and I think he's been that kind of bug in his ear for long enough now where Dad gave him a couple 100 acres as a trial area. So they're starting to do that Syntropic, you know, and basically, you know, he's doing it the way you need to do it. He's doing a small system, and I say small, you know, when you're on a couple 1,000 hectares and maybe you start with just 100 or 2 acres, that's kind of small. But he's going to do it. He's going to prove it. He's going to show him it works better. He's going to show him the output. And once he has those numbers to show Dad, you know, he can really, it's an easy sale. Like, look, Dad, you know, like this 100 acres is putting out, you know, more food per acre than, you know, your soy or your corn, and it's bringing in more value, and we're building soil. That's really important. So it's not always just what's coming out, you know, because you're taking soil away when you're growing in a monoculture system. These Syntropic systems, we're constantly building soil. So shout out to my man Andrew. He comes to Florida. He has family here about once a year. We've met in person. Awesome dude. Shout out to my friends over there at Agroforestry Academy, and thanks to you all. I know the viewers went up probably like 1,000 subscribers, and that is well deserved. They have an awesome channel. And last but not least, shout out to my teacher Tiago Barbosa from Australia. Actually, all three of those guys have messaged me about the system, and they've all said the same thing. Like, Pete, you missed the placenta, and by the placenta, you know, like a baby, I missed planting more species. So, you know, you guys thought this was a little on the dense side. They wanted it denser. They wanted to see, you know, corn or okra or eggplant or more plants interplanted, Mexican sunflower on the edge, you know, more chop and drop material. So, you know, when they design in these syntropic systems, you know, they basically, you know, we would call in permaculture guilds. I kind of find the word they like to use in the syntropic system is like a consortium of plants that work well together. And when you're putting those consortiums together, you put them in where they fit in what strata of the system. And by the strata of the system, that means where will that tree be in 3 years? So if it's an emergent species, maybe like a overstory fruit tree or a coconut palm being an emergent species, you know, that would be strata 3. You know, like Japotacaba, where does Japotacaba grow natively? You know, where is it going to be in a system, like a native system? It's going to be in the understory, so that's strata 1. You know, where did citrus, you know, natively grow in China? It grew in the jungle, strata 1. So all of these trees, you know, when you're designing the system, you're designing in the multi-strata. So strata 1 being the lowest species, strata 2 being the mid-level species, strata 3 being your overstory species. So they said that I could have even planted this denser. You know, I didn't have time to get back out here and replant. I can tell you everything we've planted is coming up really good. We're not getting any weeds, but I could have even planted this denser. So I know this was overwhelming for everybody at the density it is now, but can you imagine in between that Japotacaba, in between that pineapple, okra, eggplant, roselle, molokia, you know, I mean, the sky's the limit for species we can grow down here in the summer. You can see the taro's coming up nice, cabbage palm, cassava, pineapple, chaya, papaya, taro, nitrogen fixing tree, so service tree, pineapple, persimmon. That yellow flag, we're still missing a couple of trees. They're just coming up in the nursery. That's that grevillea. I'll be planting those really soon. Mulberries are coming up, and those have almost completely touched in. So right here we have cassava, chaya, pineapple, banana. And everybody asked me about the upside down banana. That's a video in itself. It's coming here very soon. But these were all upside down corms that I planted that are coming up with multiple pups here in this bed. I've had absolutely no weeds in the bed so far, so that's been really successful. Not fighting anything in there. And you can see the grass is getting really tall. And I'm gonna scythe this whole thing and just lay it up against the bed. I'm gonna try doing the Bahia, try doing the light Mombasa in this area. Little Suriname cherries are looking great. And right now the grass is just getting really thick out here, starting to look really good. And here's some of those seed pods. This is what I want to chop off of here ASAP. And you know, from my experience, these seeds don't just sprout from hitting the ground. I believe they have to go through like a bird. Has to go through its stomach. You know, typically speaking in the nursery industry, we scarify these seeds and then we plant them. So they need to be boiled in that scarification process. So these are still green. These are not ready to sprout yet, but I'll just chop and drop these, lay them down in that bed. And you can see Suriname cherry, cassava, nitrogen fixer, mulberry, taro, moringa, cassava, banana, pineapple, grevillea, taro, mulberry, cassava, chaya, pineapple, banana, taro. So can you imagine another 50 plants per row? Well, that's how they do it in Brazil. You know, they plant so densely that you're shading the soil. You're going to have so much material when you're pruning. You know, you're growing all of that mulch right in place. So, you know, when you're on 100, 200, 300, 1,000 hectares, you can't be bringing mulch in. That's why they've developed these systems with these dense plantings. You know, not only have they seen the symbiotic relationship from pruning the grass, the symbiotic relationship from the dense planting, but they've also seen really, really great success, you know, with putting that, you know, dense planting on the in-between there. So pretty amazing what's going on out here. I'm fairly happy with the system. I'm definitely disappointed in how the grass kind of ended up down there in that area, but it is what it is. I've learned a little bit on the system, and I don't know if you guys just noticed, but I took out that gate that's over there, and we're just going to continue going with these rows. I hope to get the next phase in fall, so it's coming along out here. I think it's looking pretty good. We definitely got some tall grass down on this end. Nitrogen fixers are kicking butt out here. But yeah, here's that tall grass, almost as tall as I am. And this is that Mombasa grass. So this is that thick-bladed Mombasa, high carbon, high silica. They tell me in Brazil that this stuff will last, you know, for a few months without breaking down out in the full sun. Feels very, very similar to the Fakahatchee grass. Kind of a little bit on that sharp side, a little bit gritty per se. And there's some weeds coming up in here, emergent weed species, you know, coming up throughout this grass. So we'll chop all this down. I'll lay this along the hedge. I might even end up bringing in a little bit more hay, you know, something just for some extra organic material until I get that seed up, just to really keep that edge along these beds thick. This way we don't get any of that grass penetration into the beds, keeping that soil shaded out here constantly. So I think the system's coming along pretty good. I'm fairly excited about it. Looks like we got a little bit of a sad avocado here, and this is probably something to do with just all of our rain. I mean, avocados will die 6 hours in wet feet. So maybe it's just not liking the amount of rain we've been getting right now, but others look great. You can see this one was tipped and it's got 3 or 4 new tips coming out. Looks really healthy. That's the Ooh La La. And here's another one where the grass is almost touching it. So here's the Mombasa, and here's a healthy looking avocado. So, whoa. All right, so I missed the placenta step. I definitely could have planted this a little denser, and I know that's making your head spin. I know there's a lot of unanswered questions on the Syntropic system, and I know that I promised you guys a live Q&A with those guys from the Agroforestry Academy. I still have the hopes of doing that here like really soon. Actually, they just messaged me the other day, so we are gonna get that on the calendar. I'd hope by sometime in mid-July, like, you guys will have a Q&A with us. We can answer all of these unanswered questions about the system, and I'll try to keep doing these monthly update videos just to show you how things are growing along out here. And I'm definitely gonna get back out here with the camera when we get siphoned. So I hope you enjoyed this like quick little Syntropic update. If you guys like this video, be sure to hit that like button. If you haven't subscribed yet, please go ahead and do so. Most importantly, get out there and pound some dirt.